Okay, here goes. On December 11th, 2019, I had a ticket to go see the newest remake of Little Women. It was a pre-screening, it was a free ticket, and I was going to drive there early. I had noticed that I'd been manic for a few days already, but I thought that I was in control, and I went in my car. I started driving. I was going down the 101 to Scottsdale, and I took my hands off the wheel. I was close to the left lane. The car kind of veered a little left, and then I don't remember what happened. The next thing I remember was I was on the side of the road, on the off-ramp, in the gravel. The car had hit a sign off the road. No other cars had been hit. My purse, my glasses, my phone, they were all on the ground behind me. And while I was sitting on the ground, a red convertible pulled up, and the guy in the convertible asked if I was okay. And I said, I think so. I didn't feel like I was hurt. But for some reason, they called an ambulance anyway, and I was taken to the ER. Here is what they said in the discharge summary. Hospital admission. 39-year-old female who came in through trauma after MVA. Patient was the driver of her car today, involved in a single vehicle accident in which the patient's car was found on the side of a road after hitting a small sign. There was no airbag deployment, and EMS notes minimal damage to the vehicle. Per EMS, the patient was ambulatory on scene, but was not acting appropriately. Upon ED arrival, the patient will not answer questions, but will speak in English momentarily before speaking in what we presume is French. Patient is also laughing inappropriately and not following commands. Per EMS, the patient supposedly has a history of bipolar disorder. No other history is available at this time. Became agitated in ER, requiring hard restraints. So the hospital course, it says acute psychosis. Patient rapidly fluctuates between singing and screaming, also displaying other behaviors, speaking in French in response to questions in English, CPR to C, no AMA, UD's negative for drugs of abuse. She is uncertain when she started losing control. Relates she went off lithium with consent of her psychiatrist in November sometime. Single vehicle crashed into small sign, trauma workup unremarkable, does not have full recall of the accident, no injuries. Bipolar disorder, unsure if taking meds / compliance. Has been on lithium, unsure of compliance. Agitation, required Hodl and Ativan. Placed in 4-point restraints, will reeval for downgrade to soft restraints or removal. And then the other stuff is not important. But anyway, I thought that I would share my story. So this was probably my last manic episode. We'll see. I've been very med compliant for the past 5 years. I've gone to all my appointments. I started seeing a therapist. I've been doing all the things that you're supposed to do. And so it's been working out good for me. I haven't been in the hospital for 5 years. I haven't felt mania in 5 years. I haven't felt depression in even longer. I've felt sad now and then, but feeling sad and feeling depressed are two very different things. Everybody feels sad sometimes. You can watch a movie and be emotionally manipulated into feeling sad. That happens to me a lot. I love sad movies. But yeah, like, it's not the same thing. So I have not felt depression in a very long time, and I have not felt mania in 5 years. Now, leading up to this car accident and this hospitalization, I was writing a lot. I remember that there was one night I was visiting a friend of mine, and I had actually visited another friend who I hadn't seen in a long time earlier that day. And we'd had this very strange conversation, and it culminated in me actually yelling at him for something, which never happens. I mean, I yell when I'm at home, which I don't like to brag about because I'm actually very ashamed of this aspect of me. But when I've never yelled at somebody who's not like inside my household. So I yelled at this guy for something that I disagreed with that he had done. And then before we parted ways, we ended up hugging each other. And then that was it. That was the last time I ever saw him. I haven't seen him since. There was another guy who I had known for quite a long time. And when I started having delusions, I began texting him some of the strange thoughts that were going through my head. And he found it very concerning. And it kind of broke apart our friendship, and I have not seen him since. He's since been gone from my life. I have totally destroyed that through my mania. So some of the things that happened leading up to it, I remember I found this vendor, who was selling fresh fruits and vegetables on the street in downtown Phoenix. I don't know exactly where. It's been so long. And she was from a Spanish-speaking country. I don't know which one. And I bought oranges from her, and I remember they were like the best oranges I had ever tasted. And I just wanted to share them with everyone. I'm like, you're gonna love these, and you gotta try these. And I took them to another friend's house, and she liked them, and they were just really popular. And I had also begun watching a few movies, and those movies had a really big impact on me. And I was beginning to think that the movies were sending me messages, that like God was speaking to me through these particular movies. So one of those movies was actually a TV show called The Good Place. And I don't know if you've seen that, but it was the last season was airing that year. And I was watching one of the episodes where they were like trying to figure out what to do because they discovered that nobody was making it to the good place anymore. And somebody had mentioned rebooting the universe. And then I got this notion in my head that the universe needed rebooting and that it had actually been rebooted many times before. And we just weren't aware of it because we live in time. We don't live in eternity. And my concept of God remained that God was love, and that he was safety, that he was protecting me from whatever was going on out in the world. And I also had this notion that he had a sense of playfulness, like, I didn't talk to God out loud. I didn't hear any audible voices, but I felt like I was getting thoughts in my head that weren't from me, that they were from God. And so I was having conversations in my head with God. And sometimes they were serious and sometimes they were playful. And I was singing a lot more. And I was crying a lot more. And I remember when I knew, because I was losing sleep, that's one of the signs of mania, and I was losing my appetite. And I remember when I noticed this, I told my dad, and I was like, do you think that I should go to the psychiatric hospital for observation? And he thought that I'd be fine. And I was just like, okay, because I was aware of what was going on. So of course, if I was aware, of course, it would be fine. In retrospect, I probably should have called my psychiatrist and gotten back on the medicine that we'd gotten off of back in November, which was the lithium. I had been on lithium for many years, and I had that fall wanted to start running again. And when I started running on lithium, I began sweating a lot. I began feeling nauseous, and I just was not enjoying the side effects. And I hadn't had an episode in like 17 years. So I'm like, maybe I'd be fine. So my psychiatrist took me off the medicine. She thought, well, just give it a try. And if you hear my dog bark, I'm sorry. She is excited. But anyway, I was off the medicine. There were actually a couple other people I contacted in my mania. One of them I sent a long email to. I just noticed on my Facebook that he was a suggested person for like asking if I wanted to be my friend. And that leads me to believe that maybe he unfriended me after that email, which wouldn't be a surprise. And so you do kind of break a lot of relationships when this is going on. Now, after the ER visit, they did send me to a psychiatric hospital. This was one I'd never been to before. And while I was there, I met this young girl in the hospital who was there mostly for anxiety. And in talking to her, I found out that she had been in the ER at the exact same time I had been in there. And she heard me singing. I was singing when I was in the ER. I was singing like Broadway show tunes and Disney songs. I know, weird, but that's how it was. And she heard me and she remembered me. And we actually kind of bonded over that. And we kept in touch for a while. And then a couple of years ago, something really tragic happened in her life. And she emailed me and she was completely distraught and wanted to know what the Bible would say to her. And the only thing I could offer was the Psalms, because there's a lot in the Psalms about people like mourning and lamenting. Yes, there's praise in there, but there's a whole book called Lamentations. So we know that people cry out to God all the time in pain. It's not just when things are good that we talk to God. We definitely talk to him when we're going through stuff that's difficult. Let's see. I was in the hospital the discharge date from the ER was December 12th. Then they sent me to the psychiatric hospital, and I stayed there until I think the day after Christmas. So I spent Christmas Day there. And I felt like I was there way too long, because all these people that were there when I came in, by the time I left, they had long since gone home. So I was like, why am I still here? Why is nobody helping me get out of here? And when I did get out, I had to take an Uber because my parents wouldn't drive me. They could still drive at the time. My dad could. My mom couldn't. But my dad didn't want to go all the way out to the particular hospital where they sent me because it was far away. In fact, they never visited me there. So only one person visited me. And she was a friend that I've known for a long time. But for the record, if you ever know somebody who has to go to a psychiatric hospital, they have very short visiting hours. So you can't just, it's not like a regular hospital where you can walk in anytime and see somebody. You have to go in at the specific time, and it's usually about a half an hour that they give you. So it's not a lot of time. But I think it is important to visit people there because it's important to show that you're not, it's important to show your support, and it's still very stigmatized. Even in this day and age, there's still a lot of stigma surrounding mental illness. So to not have the moral support of the people you love can be very hurtful. So I think that it's good to visit people you know who are in there. Trying to think what else. Every single time I've been hospitalized, singing has been a big component of my hospitalization, because it's always been like a coping mechanism for me. It began with my first hospitalization in France when I didn't even realize I was sick. I just thought I'd had this really profound religious experience and everybody was just misinterpreting it or something. And so I just would sing because I was like, well, people already think I'm crazy, so why not just give them more, reason for them to think that. So I just would sing in the psychiatric hospital, and it made me feel good. And I had a pretty good voice at the time. I don't sing very well anymore. I'm way out of practice. I have jaw issues, so I can't open my mouth like I used to be able to. I don't have the range that I used to be able to have. But when I was 23, I could still do it pretty well. And I'd sometimes sing for the patients, and I'd sometimes sing for myself. And it was pretty good for everyone, I think. And sometimes some of the patients would sing back to me. I remember one of them sang the song "We Shall Overcome," and he didn't even know what the words meant. He was just singing it because someone else had sang it to him and he liked it. He didn't know what the words meant, and I had to do my best with the French that I had to translate it for him and say, you know what that means? That's like pretty spot on for being in a place where you feel like a prisoner, because mental hospitals often feel like prisons. You're locked in there. You can't leave until they tell you you can leave. So, yeah. Anyway, obviously things got better. It's been 5 years. I don't want to go back into a hospital, so I'm gonna do my best to stay medication compliant. I am going to keep seeing my doctors, and I am going to keep, I don't know what else. I did write a memoir, which I've talked about before, I've written about, I've promoted before. It's not a very good memoir. But it's got some useful information if you want to learn more about this kind of stuff, especially hyper-religiosity, which is the bit about having the whole God thing in it, like the God component. That's the whole hyper-religiosity part, which I made a video about on YouTube. It's completely distinct from religious experience. Religious experience is not part of mental illness, but hyper-religiosity is. So you can look that up if you want. Anyway, that's my story. Thanks for listening. Bye.